Ana m anụ ka ị na-aka. Ogbu ọja.
Thank you for staying with us. Well, it's a woman thing, so...
Obviously.
It would be...
We have to wait.
Wait for what?
Oh, you know, when the music stopped, we waited for a bit. So when you say it's a woman thing, we have to wait. We just have to
women
wait.
Is what I mean.
Oh, okay, sorry.
By a woman thing.
Okay.
Earth women.
Okay, just...
And aptly, the woman is taking this topic.
Obviously. So.
Earth Women is a poignant documentary that explores the plight of women living in communities impacted by extractive activities, including oil and gas exploration and mining. It's an initiative of CSR in Action Advocacy, the development-focused arm of CSR in Action Group, and funded by Ford Foundation, an international organization committed to supporting social justice. It's my pleasure to welcome Bekeme Masade Oluwola. Good morning, and she's the Chief Executive of CSR in Action. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, at the beginning of the program, we were wondering what Earth Women was all about. It's nice to see. Okay, it's a documentary.
It is a documentary.
Yes, okay. What is the central theme of this documentary?
Okay, so the central theme of Earth Women, the documentary, is really the challenges that women face in extractive communities, that is oil and gas and mining communities. So the discrimination...
That's pretty much all over Nigeria.
Pretty much all over Nigeria, exactly, exactly, because we're a resource-rich country. So yes, we're talking about this because, you know, we've had conferences for 10 years, and we try to flag up these issues, especially starting with the community issues and then leading to the women issues. But then, you know, it doesn't just come across as graphically as you want it to. And so it was time for us to graphically represent this through this documentary, and I think it's been a fantastic move to make.
What led you to this documentary?
So we've had a sustainability in the extractive industries initiative for 10 years, since 2012 when we started it with the Deputy High Commission of Canada. It's called CITE for short. And what we do is we bring together leaders in business, in government, from host communities, and CSOs as well, to have discussions around inclusiveness in that space, you know, because all of this has led to conflict over the years, and when there's conflict in these regions with resources, it affects the entire country. So we've had these conversations because we wanted each party to have some sense of equity. And then when in 2018, we got funding from the Foster 2 initiative of DFID to create a standard for CSR and community engagement within that space, we realized that we couldn't actually get women to participate in the discussions. Yes, so we would sit down there, and before we arrived for the meetings in the communities, we would say we want 30% of women represented. After all, we're having discussions that would affect the entire community. And as we all know, women are nurturers, women look after the family, after the children, and all of that.
So we wait.
So we wait.
We have to wait for them.
But we didn't even have to wait. So if we had waited, we would wait forever.
Because they didn't exist.
So it was just a few women.
That's the thing. We had to wait until we got them. Anyway, that's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to... okay. Permit me to ask you this. There's something you knew before the documentary was shot.
Yes.
What were the other discoveries? Because I suspect you may have made some other discoveries that you will wonder, we didn't even know this existed in the process of shooting the documentary. Did you have that experience?
Not really.
Okay.
Because we've been working in this space for 10 years. So we just wanted people to see what we've been seeing all of these years, you know. So I was saying, you want women in the room, and they don't feel like they should be having that conversation because society has told them it's not for you. And, you know, every time that, you know, there's a new license and a new company or the government wants to engage with leaders, it's the men in the communities. And so they didn't feel like they needed to be there. We even had an incident where one of the CSO leaders that we brought had to kneel down to beg one of the chiefs because he was offended because she had a different opinion from him. The meeting would not have continued had she not done that. And she's a leader locally and globally, and she had to kneel down to beg. And so we thought that it was time for us to tell these stories. And you see, with that space, there's also inequity in terms of resource distribution in general. So you have a lot of men who are unhappy because you have, you can see wealth, but you don't actually have access to the wealth. And, you know, when they're frustrated, they take it out on the women. And then the pollution that comes with, you know, extraction is actually causing a lot of other things, health issues, infertility, all of these things, and the women bear the brunt. You know how we are in our society. She doesn't give birth, she's a snake. Yeah. Nobody's looking to the man to see why, you know, that hasn't
I wonder
happened.
why that is anyway.
I don't know why.
I don't know. I don't know. But, you know, one of the
many times these days, it is the man's fault.
Absolutely, as we saw in the documentary. So you would, if you would watch it, it's actually been screened by the Cocoa Film Festival today at Silverbird Galleria. You would find that in the particular case, one of the victims that we interviewed, who didn't actually want her face shown, by the way, because she was afraid of the repercussions, you find that she was beating, there was a time she was beating from 5 a.m. in the morning till 4 p.m. the next day, that evening, beg your pardon, because the man was just unhappy. And he took it out on her, and everybody said it was her fault, that they couldn't have kids. But then she left him. She got to be with somebody else.
And immediately got pregnant.
She got pregnant.
Okay, we're talking about the documentary, okay? So let's have a snippet. Let's take a quick look at what the trailer of The Earth Women is.
Dagan we boko. Alo zakan. Alo zakan ne. No about dagan. Ero yezaza ro. We don't know that there is problem.
I doesn't want to remember.
There's a lot of conflict in the regions that these minerals come from.
The entire processes of even exploration, it goes beyond even where these activities are taking place.
As long as extraction means you are bringing something from below the surface of the earth, that process always have a kind of impact generally on women.
Are you ready?
Yes.
So that's just a snippet.
Are you ready?
For?
Well, that was the last question that was asked on that.
To be positively traumatized.
What?
To be positively traumatized. That's what we wanted to do. When you think about trauma, it's negative, right? But we want you to watch this, be traumatized, and take action.
Okay. And other than that, what other expectations do you have? What are the action points or outcomes you expect?
Okay, so specifically, we've said businesses who work in this space, institutions who work in oil and gas and mining must have gender policies. They must have bespoke gender policies that take care of the needs of women, you know, to ensure that there's a mainstreaming in the conversation around women. And this should also be a part of the conversations that they have with the communities that they have to work with. You know, every time that I come into your community, I want to ensure that I will meet with women, a good representation of women. We also have said that these businesses should carry out gender impact assessments prior to project commencement. Now, all of these things are contained in that community engagement standards that I talked about. It's a tool with 44 indicators, properly researched, that takes an organization from the very first time that they enter into a community through when they have to leave, when there's a handover or decommissioning of the project. So it tells you exactly what you should do without being prescriptive. I mean, you can own it, but it basically says you must engage in such and such a manner. You must be inclusive. It must be iterative. So we've said that. And then what we're trying to do as well is we're raising funding to create a technological platform that would create access to markets for these women. Because as you would find in the documentary as well, many of them have to mine under very crude, unsafe conditions, leaving their babies on the roadside in the hot sun, and then they get a pittance for all of this work. And so we are trying to create access to markets for them so they get the complete value for what they work for.
Well, speaking to that very quickly, NATE says women make up just about 18% of the workforce in Nigeria's oil and gas industry. So on the one hand, the numbers are few. On the other hand, the numbers don't get value for money.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, because in general, women don't even know how to, you're not brought up to negotiate for those kinds of things. And even with that representation, the 18%, which is quite small, you also find that the positions are not as senior as you would like, and so they can't actually influence decision making.
Okay. So what are the aspirations? So on the one hand, we want them upskilled. Now we have a situation where they're not even enough. Do you think if we had more women in the space, they would be able to sympathize with the challenges of women in the space?
I actually believe so. I believe so. I think that the problem that we have is cultural. And so oftentimes women don't even realize that we've had this ingrained in us from childbirth. So there's that one to deal with, the fact that, you know, when you get into the room, you have to create space for other women. But if I were to look at myself, many of my bigger opportunities have been through women. But so I do believe that because we face those challenges, when we get into the room, we're able to create the opportunities for other women.
Now, in getting this production together, what kinds of challenges did you face, seeing as it was the women you wanted and they were not really accepted when negotiations were taking place and all that?
So the challenges are generally the challenges that you face when you want to go into a conflict-ridden host community, right? Because they're unhappy. They've had many years of being treated like second-class citizens in their own communities. So generally, they're not, they're a bit hostile to any new persons. But the thing is, we worked with experts in those communities. We worked with CSOs that have been working with them for years, because at CSR in Action, we address systems more. We address decision makers, but we work with community experts. And so they had created access for us. However, security was a big situation, of course, and we had to be very careful. The other thing I would say was access, even though I said they created access, but opportunity for the people to be open and to be vulnerable. I think that I know that there's been a lot of exploitation of these people, not just exploitation of their resources, but of, you know, them in general. So you have a lot of people coming to the communities asking questions and nothing, you know, being done, nothing, you know, you're not getting anything out of it. And so I feel like I have this huge responsibility to make sure that their voices are heard. So we've produced this documentary, and the onus is on us and partners like yourselves to help us spread the word, because the more people hear it, the more they want to do something about it. I had a conversation afterwards, after the premiere, because we brought in some of the some of the, shall I call them stars, in the documentary from the communities, and they were very excited. And, you know, they said to me, I really look forward to something changing. And every time I think about that, I'm thinking, okay, you've got to do more. You've got to do more. And I do think that it has started with these conversations that we're having. The feedback has been better than 10 years put together of arranging these talk fests. And I do want to see it, you know, transcend even into more actionable points, like things that we can actually see. And we'll definitely keep on reporting on this. We have our website, www.sitei.org, SITEI, which is the acronym for the conference we've had for years. So sitei.org/Earthwomen. And it has all this information about how you can support and spread the word so that we can actually create some change for
Let me
people.
ask you about that, because we actually began the program by asking the question, how do you pronounce this word? Sitei, Sitei? Sitei. Okay, so Earthwomen is obviously, from what you've said, part of this bigger initiative called Sitei. So what is it all about? What is Sitei all about?
So sustainability in the extractive industries is as its name is. And so when you think sustainability is really, in simple terms, managing resources in a way that you do not deny future generations access to these resources. And as we all know, over 70% of our government revenue comes from oil and gas and mining, right? So we think that embedding the concept, the notion of sustainability within the industries is tantamount to embedding it in the nation, right? So we keep on having these conversations around managing the environment, you know, governance, and, you know, other social issues like human rights, women's rights, youth participation. And this initiative, you know, has the conference, we train, you know, different institutions. We have different engagement fora via which we try to facilitate long-term thinking.
Okay.
By the way, what was the setting for the documentary? Or what is the setting?
The setting for the documentary is a Kedera community in the Gokana local government area of River State. Gokana.
Okay.
In River State, and then Badagry as well.
Okay. Why those choices?
We were actually going to go to 3 states in Nigeria. We wanted to cover the southwest, south-south, and the north, but again, security issues. By the time we were recording the documentary, we were filming the documentary, it was the period when they turned off cellular networks in the north. So we had identified fantastic, I don't know whether to use something as positive as fantastic for victims, right? But we'd gotten stories that we thought were worth telling, but then we couldn't access at the time. And, you know, before you knew it, and, you know, all of this was happening within the COVID restrictions and everything. So we had to literally just do what we could in the time that we had and with the access that we had at the time. But we wanted to be sure that we were representing oil and gas and mining, right? Because mining isn't going anywhere. It has the potential to, you know, create great revenue for the country. If it's done in a sustainable manner, it can be good for the economy. We need it for different things, you know, plastics, cosmetics, and all of that. So if we're having this conversation now, then we're going to help forestall so many of the things that happened with the oil and gas. The things that we didn't manage well in oil and gas, we can actually manage better before mining kicks off proper.
This Sitei speaks to sustainability now. So there are questions around how sustainability benefits organizations in Nigeria today.
You know, every time I have that conversation, I say, if businesses had been more responsible early on, then you would not have a lot of companies selling off assets and fleeing conflict-ridden communities. And that's what sustainability is about. it's really about responsible behavior. It's not giving back, right? It's entering a place and making sure that your corporate strategy is mindful of your key stakeholders. If you haven't done that, then you're not ready to be in business for the long term. And
you will not be welcome.
You will not be welcome. License to operate, very important.
It sounds like sustainability has a bigger, sustainability and responsibility, two words. They have bigger understandings or meanings than the dictionary.
So you see, sustainability is all-encompassing. To me, it's life. It's life in general. It's the same way I manage my resources and my networks so that they work well for me. That's how it is for institutions, really. It's managing those relationships. So 10 years ago, I met with Sir Mahmoud Stewart, who was the first chairperson and managing director of one of the big oil companies in Nigeria. At the time, he was then the chairman for the UNGC Foundation. And he agreed, he admitted to me that the challenge that they had was the superficial mode of engagement. So oil and gas companies would come into a community and they would have a discussion with the king, the chief. And they didn't take time out to talk to the other critical members of the community. And you know what? That sharp guy thing doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like, you can't just have that conversation and you go. And then it's happened the first time that the next time you came back in, the communities weren't happy and you didn't actually learn from that to then delve deeper and to come back. So for instance, the law says that when you carry out an environmental impact assessment, you should actually show it to the communities. For 21 days, it should be on display. Many companies don't do that. Many say they now do it, but guess what? They don't even let the people know that it's there. And then it's reported in such a manner that, the average person can't actually access the information. So you see, these are the things. It's intentionality, it's sincerity of purpose.
Sounds like the conversation hasn't started.
Well,
it has now.
Is this documentary going to be on Netflix?
We're working on that.
Okay.
Yes, please.
All right, then. So, Bekeme, thank you very much for coming. Bekeme Masade Olowola, Chief Executive of CSR in Action. Thank you
so much for having
me.
me.
Coming to talk to us about this initiative. We wish, your premiere is today, you say?
Yes, at 4 p.m. Silverbird Galleria.
Good luck.
Thank you.
We wish you all the best. Thank you for staying with us. We'll be right back with the home stretch in just a moment. Having stayed this long, you better stay on for the home stretch.